Alrighty, social studies. Let's go ahead and get started with class today. So as you come in and you come into our meet, you'll see our do now is on the screen. So what I want you to do is just like normal, go ahead and open up your Google Classroom. And in Google Classroom, you will find the Google form. Okay. Remember, we always do our do now with a Google form. Okay. And just like normal, okay, you can pick which challenge that you want to complete. Okay, so remember for the do now, I give you three choices. Okay, the green is the easy, the blue is the medium, and the black is the hard challenge. Okay, and you get to pick which one you want to do today. Okay, so if you choose the green challenge, you're going to answer how did you celebrate July 4th last year? Okay, so Independence Day, right? 4th of July. How did you celebrate that with last year? Maybe you're with family, maybe you're with friends. Go ahead and tell me what you did. Okay. If you want to do the blue challenge or the medium challenge, you're going to answer what do Americans celebrate on July 4th? Right. So why do we celebrate July 4th? Okay. What does that mean to us? Okay. If those two seem really easy and you want to challenge a little bit, then you can answer the black challenge and you're going to answer how does July 4th fit with America's national identity? Okay, so how does July 4th fit in with America's national identity? You're going to explain that in one complete sentence, okay? Making sure you have good punctuation, grammar, usage, all that good stuff. Okay, so I'm going to give you 4 minutes to answer one of these questions. Okay, now in a normal class, I would give them the time, but just in sake of our time, I'm going to go ahead and move on. So after the do now is done, okay, class, go ahead and come back to me and come back to our screen. Make sure you can track my screen. Okay, I'm going to go over our learning objectives for the day. Okay, so today is April 15th, 2022. It is tax day. It is also Mr. Bain's birthday, fun fact. Learning target. Okay, so there's two things that we're going to be able to do today. Okay, you are going to be able to analyze the context of the American Revolution. Okay, and you're going to investigate George Washington and King George III. Okay, I would wager that most of you probably heard of George Washington, but maybe King George is a new name for us. We're going to dive into that a little bit later. Okay, as always, I like to start each class with a relevancy on why we're doing what we're doing. And I think that as Americans, right, we all live in America. We all enjoy the benefits that it gives us. Okay, and we all have talked about what it means to be an American for us. Okay, but I'm going to challenge you. Has it always been this way? Was America born a perfect country that had no struggles or no strife, nothing like that? Or has there been a long road to get there? Okay. And since we all live in America and we all every day enjoy its benefits, I think it's important we see how we got to where we are today. Okay, some vocab words. Some of them you've heard before, like colony, England. I know those are things that we've talked about before. Relationship. I also have George Washington and King George III. Also, the words revolution and independence. So those are going to be some of the vocab words we're going to be working with today. Okay, so in your Pear Deck, okay, if you haven't already gotten to the Pear Deck, and make sure you follow the link in the chat that I posted at the beginning of class. Okay, the link is always in there, and that's going to take you right to our Pear Deck. Okay, remember our Pear Deck is a live editable, so I can see it as you type it. So I just need to make sure that we're all giving 100%, we're all staying on topic. Okay, and I want you to answer these two questions in one complete sentence each. Okay, so for the first one, in this box on the left here, okay, I want you to answer, what does it mean to be independent? Right? If you were independent from something, okay, what does that actually mean? Okay, and I want you to answer that in one good sentence. Okay, then when you answer that one, the next one I want you to try to answer is, what should you do if you find yourself in a bad relationship? Okay, maybe that's like you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or maybe that's like a friend relationship, right? Relationships can mean lots of different things. It doesn't just necessarily have to mean just like a romantic relationship, right? A relationship between two people. If you found yourself in a bad relationship, okay, what should you do? Okay, so I want you to answer those two questions. I'm going to give you 6 minutes. Okay, so that's 3 minutes per question. Okay, so let's make sure we're staying on task and answering those. I'm going to be going through and reading our responses and kind of interacting with us as you're answering. Okay, so go ahead and do that now, and I'll give you 6 minutes. Okay, then we'll fast forward the 6 minutes. All righty, so coming back together with me, you all had some really, really great responses. I think that we all know that to be independent, I think a lot of us kind of had the same idea that it really means that you are doing something without assistance from other people, right? You're doing something on your own, okay? Obviously, we had varying responses in there, but that was the general gist of what I had read. And then everyone pretty much said the same thing. And if you're in a bad relationship, you leave that relationship, right? You get out of there, you do what's best for yourself. Okay, so let's take all those ideas. They might kind of seem out of the ordinary and kind of weird, but it's all going to make sense. Just stick with me. Okay, so go ahead and track the screen that I'm looking at now. Okay, you hopefully can see my screen. If not, make sure that you have my box pinned on your Google Meets. So when my voice talks, you can see my screen pop up. Okay, so this is America, right? You all have seen this map hundreds of times in your life, okay? We all know the general shape, right? Maybe you don't know every single state, every city, that's all fine. We all have a general idea of the shape, okay? But what we also know is that America didn't always look like this, right? America wasn't just created with this shape, right? America started much smaller and it expanded, right? Okay, and when we've talked about the 13 colonies, okay, if you all remember, this red circle here, this is really where America got its start, right? Before it was even America and they were just colonies, okay, this is where the majority of settlers lived. Now, of course, we know that all of this land was not empty over here to the west, right? That was all occupied by mostly Native Americans, right? There were some French there were some Spanish, but mostly Native Americans had lived in this land, right? And so when we zoom in a little bit, okay, we know that America started like this, okay? And our whole last unit was talking about these 13 colonies, okay? So hopefully for you looking at this map, this isn't the first time you're seeing this, and you can kind of recall some of that prior knowledge that we talked about before this unit. Okay, so to help jog your memories, what I want you all to do right now is we're going to do a mind map. Okay, so in your Pear Deck, okay, the topic is going to be 13 colonies. Okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to list everything that you remember about the 13 colonies. Okay, list everything that you remember. It can be one thing, it can be 10 things, just whatever you remember. Okay, and your goal is I'm going to set a 2-minute timer. Okay, and your goal is to type for that whole 2 minutes, okay? As many things as you can think of. Okay, they can be very broad, like they are in what is now America. Like it's totally, there's no wrong answers here. Well, there are wrong answers, but you can't be too broad or too specific, okay? I want you to just list everything you remember. 2 minutes, go. Okay, then we'll fast forward through the 2 minutes. Alrighty, so looking at those mind maps, I saw some really, really great stuff. I think that what I want to do now, though, is some kids maybe still might be struggling to remember. So what I want you all to do is I want you to take the number one thing from your mind map and I want you to put it in the chat. Okay, so the number one thing that you remember, I want you to put it in the chat. So maybe kids who don't remember anything can kind of jog their memories a little bit. So go ahead and take 1 minute, take your best thing from your mind map and put it in our Google Meets chat. Go. Okay. Boom, 1 minute fast forward. Alrighty, everybody. So now we're back to me, and I'm going to give us a little bit more context. Okay, we're going to take about 5 or 10 minutes of direct instruction, and then I'm going to let you all have a solo activity where you're going to be working and doing some analyzing on your own. Okay, but I need you all to stay with me for about these next 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, you all know that I don't love lecturing. It's not my favorite thing to do. So I'm going to try to wrap this up and keep it quick for you so you all can have more time to explore on your own. Okay, so let's come back to that Pear Deck response at the beginning of class, right? If you were in a bad relationship with someone, what should you do, right? And most of us had said that we should leave. Okay, well, I want you to think of England and the 13 colonies like a bad relationship, okay? These two areas, okay, are very far apart, but they have a lot of influence over each other. Okay, in England, right, they controlled the 13 colonies even though they lived across an entire ocean. Okay, and this relationship, right, was for a while actually very productive. Okay, England and the 13 colonies actually got along really well for a long time. It was kind of like a win-win relationship, right? The 13 colonies, they had lots of goods, right? They had lots of tobacco that they would farm, right? They had lots of natural resources, lots of things that they would create and that they would make that they would sell back to England. Okay, so England and the 13 colonies were actually both making lots of money on this relationship. Okay, but over time, okay, England, they wanted to have more control over the 13 colonies, right? And even though the colonies were across the Atlantic Ocean, okay, England wanted the colonies to directly be under the control of the king. Okay, and the 13 colonies, they didn't really like this idea. Okay, they thought it was fine at first, but then when the king started asking for more and he wanted them to pay more in taxes and have more control, the colonies really decided that England wasn't going to be the best person to help them flourish. Okay, and so the 13 colonies, they actually decided to declare independence from England. Okay, they wanted to become independent from England and become their own country. Okay, now think about it. If you're England, this probably does not sound like a good idea to you. Okay, thinking about all of the money and all of the control that you had, you don't want to just give that up to let these colonies become free. So England was like, not going to happen. Okay, now the 13 colonies wanted to become independent. England wanted to control them. Okay, so here we see that there's going to be some conflict that's starting to build. Okay, and the name of this conflict that comes up is the American Revolution. Okay, and then what we're going to do as a class over these next few weeks is we're going to talk about how does America become independent from another country? Because obviously we're not English citizens today, right? We don't listen to the Queen, right? We have our own president, our own government. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out what happens in the middle there, right? How does America go from being under the control of England to being its own country? Okay, and that's what we're going to be talking about starting today. Now, that's a huge topic, right? There's so many things that you could possibly talk about there. Okay, but what we're going to do is we're going to just start at the beginning. Okay, super easy. We're going to actually start at the top. Okay, and what we're going to do first is we're going to find out who is in charge of these two areas. Okay, because on one side you have the 13 colonies, and on the other side you have the King of England. Okay, and both sides had leaders who were very, very passionate and very, very much loved where they lived. Okay, and both leaders, while they may have had a lot of differences, had a lot more in common than we might think. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start by looking at the two leaders of these two regions. Okay, I'm not going to call the 13 colonies a country yet because they hadn't yet won their independence, right? So we're going to call the 13 colonies a region. Okay, and so George Washington, okay, the name that we've all heard before, he was the leader of these 13 colonies. This man here on the left with the fancy blue and black jacket and the nice white horse, that's George Washington. Okay. Now, on the other side of the ocean in England, we have King George III. Okay. Another George. Okay. And King George III, okay, he was the king of England, right? He was the full power. He was in charge. He shared power with Parliament, but he was the one who was the face of England, right? He was the one who really had the influence and was in charge. Okay, so what I like to say is the American Revolution is a George versus George, right? Two Georges, two very, very different ideas, but also two very similar people who both want what's best for their countries. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to analyze these two Georges to kind of get an idea of what they represent and how they represent their countries. Okay, so on the left, right, we have George versus George. Okay, on the left, we have George Washington here. On the right, we have King George. So what you're going to do today, okay, is you're going to do what's called the George versus George painting activity. And this is going to be your solo activity. Okay, and you are going to look at these two paintings. You're going to kind of analyze them and decide, how do these represent their people? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I want to show you. Okay, so I'm going to keep sharing my screen. Okay, and I'm going to show you our task. So in a normal classroom, when I have Google Classroom, I would have all of these linked into my Google Classroom. But this is, seeing as how this is recording, I just have them linked as tabs. So I'm going to go through the tabs and show you the kids' task. But just know that in a normal classroom, this would just be linked for them and they would pick. So in our George versus George painting activity, okay, you're going to pick one of three challenges, okay? I have a green challenge, a blue challenge, and a black challenge. Okay, just like the Do Now, these challenges are leveled, and you are going to pick just one that you want to complete. Okay, the green challenge is our easy challenge, the blue challenge is our medium challenge, and the black challenge is our hard challenge. Like if you're really looking for to be challenged a little bit. I feel like I said challenge a lot there. So let me show you what the tasks are, and you will get a chance to pick which one you want to do. Whether or not you do green, blue, or black, it is always going to be a Google form. Okay, that is your task for today. So it doesn't matter if you do easy, medium, or hard, you're still going to be interacting with the Google form. Now, the green activity, okay, I'm going to pull this up here. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to look at this painting of King George III. Okay, this is painted in 1800 by Sir William Beechey. Okay, and this is a painting that represents King George. Okay, so you can see his nice fancy red jacket, his fancy hat, his cane, all that good stuff. Okay, and what you're going to do is you're going to look through this painting. Okay, you're going to tell me your name. You're going to tell me the class period that you're in. Okay, just so I can get that data. Then you're going to answer just some questions about the painting itself. So you're going to tell me what are two things that you notice about this painting. Okay, when you look at this painting, what's just something that jumps out to you, right? Maybe it's the colors. Maybe it's his facial expressions. Maybe it's what he's holding, right? So what jumps out to you? You're going to tell me two things. Okay, the next you're going to tell me you're going to look at the actual objects in the picture. So what does he have? What is he holding? What's near him? And what do they tell us about this person? Okay, so if he's here, if he's holding this cane, and actually, I think no, that is a cane, but here on the right, that's a sword, right? So we think about what kind of people might be holding swords, right? How is a sword going to help a certain person? So think about what the objects they're holding and what they tell us. Okay, then lastly, you're going to tell us how do you think the painter felt about this person? Do you think that they respected them? Do you think that they hated them? Okay, and I want you to tell me why you think that. Okay, now we're looking at a source, so there's no words here, right? It's all visual. Okay, so really, I want you to look at these visuals. I want you to interpret them on what you think the painter was trying to share with us. Okay, so that's the green challenge. Now, maybe you're like, Mr. Bain, too easy. I need something tougher. Well, I got you. You're going to go to the blue challenge. Okay, now the blue challenge, it starts the same, right? You still have your painting here, same painting, right? You're still going to give me your name and your class, but then your questions are going to go a little bit deeper. Okay, so you're going to start by telling me the two things you notice, and you're going to tell me about the objects. Okay, those two questions are the same, but where it's going to differ is now you're going to talk about the art style. Okay, how does the use of color change the message of the painting, or the use of the perspective or lines, right? How does the way that the painter creates King George, what does that tell us about him? Okay, is he trying to make him look big and tough? Is he trying to make him look scary? Okay, how does the painter portray King George? Okay, then finally, the last question you're going to tell me is what can we infer about each person by looking at their photo? So just looking at this photo, what do we know about King George? Okay, so that's the blue challenge. Now, finally, if that seems too easy, the black challenge. Now, if you're doing the black challenge, okay, this is like the level 4 challenge. Okay, so I only want you to do this if you feel super, super confident that you understand George Washington, King George. Okay, so the black challenge, okay, still starts the same. Okay, you got your picture, you got your name and your class. Okay, and I'm still gonna have you talk about the objects, and I still want you to talk about the art style. Okay, and I still want you to infer. So the first three questions are the same. Okay, but where you're gonna dive deeper in the black challenge, you're gonna tell me what do you think are the central ideas or themes of this painting? So, like, what are the themes he's trying to share? Maybe he's trying to share bravery. Maybe he's trying to share honor. Maybe he's trying to share cowardice or fear, right? Depending on how this person views and how they paint their person that they're painting, that can totally change the outlook of the painting, right? So I want you to think about what are the central ideas or the themes. And I want you to support that answer with evidence. Okay, so make sure you can point to specific pieces of the painting and why you're forming that opinion. Okay, so that is your task. I'm going to give you 25 minutes. Now, you're going to do this for King George and George Washington. So you are going to end up turning in two Google Forms. Okay, two Google Forms are going to be due to me in the next 27 minutes. Okay, at 27 minutes, we're going to call it. So that gives you a little bit more than like 13 minutes per. Okay, so that should give you enough time to analyze these paintings and respond. If you need more time, we'll discuss that at the end of our time, but I really want you to try to get this done in the time I give you. Okay? Does anybody have any questions? Put them in the chat before we start. Okay, pause. And so then I also have a George Washington Google form created. It is the exact same thing. It's still leveled out. The only difference is the painting is different. It's the George Washington painting. I just felt in the interest of time, I would only show you the King George one, but in an actual real lesson, they would be doing King George Google form and a George Washington Google form to see that analysis, and to get the compare and contrast. So that is my lesson. I think that the number one way that I feel that I can reach all students is through the way that I am giving those different access points and differentiating. I try to always make the green challenge something that almost any kid can do, maybe with some minimal support. But I've had students with IEPs be able to access green challenges. ELD students, what's really cool is Google Forms has a really easy way to just translate it into Spanish. So which my population is mostly Spanish speaking. So the Google Forms are a really easy way because I can just translate it super quick, and then I would just send that out as a personal email to students. Unless I had a big portion of ELD students in class, then I would just make it a link in Google Classroom. But that is how I would accommodate for ELD. Students in the ILC, I have been able to access the green challenges as well, especially if it's more visual. I really try to keep the green challenges something that are a little bit more subjective. So the kids can pick out what they view as important and are backing that up. And I think if as the kids move to the blue and the black challenge, then it becomes more of like looking for specific things that I want them to find. But as far as the green goes, it's more subjective on what they are picking out. And if I feel like if they can start by interacting in what they see, then I can push them deeper just a little bit easier. So that is the main ways that I would accommodate this lesson. And let me see, I want to make sure I answer all questions, but I really think that let me make sure I have everything. Yeah, so that is my lesson. If you have any questions, please always feel free to reach out. I'm going to stop the video here, then I'll do the question portion next, and then I'll just attach them as two links together. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop rambling now. All righty, bye-bye.